Zane grunted as he steadied the weight of the leather sofa on his shoulder, sweat dripping down his back despite the February chill. "You got that," he called over his shoulder to the delivery guy helping him. Yeah, the kid huffed. "Man, this building's insane." Zane glanced up at the towering Manhattan skyscraper that shimmered like chrome in the morning sun. "Penthouse," he muttered, checking the delivery slip again. "Who even orders a $10,000 couch and doesn't pick it out in person?" "Rich people," the kid said, rolling his eyes. Zane didn't respond. He had other things on his mind, like how much this gig would pay, if it would cover this month's rent, and if he could still afford his daughter's dance recital costume. Being a single dad working 2 jobs didn't leave much room for luxury or mistakes. By the time they reached the top floor, Zane's arms were shaking. The elevator doors opened into a white marble foyer that looked like it belonged in a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows spilled sunlight across sleek furniture and abstract art. It didn't even smell like people lived here. "Where do you want it?" Zane called into the silence. "I was thinking by the windows," said a voice, low and smooth. Zane turned and stopped breathing for a second. Standing barefoot on the polished floors was a woman in a silk shirt tucked into black slacks, her long dark hair pulled into a loose twist. She looked like she had walked out of a fashion magazine, but it wasn't just her looks that threw him, it was the way she was looking at him. Calm, curious. Like she wasn't expecting a delivery guy, but didn't mind that he was here. Sure," Zane said, blinking. "Over here?" "Yes, please," she said, walking closer. Her heels clicked on the marble. "I'm Zaria, this was for the sitting area." Zane cleared his throat. Zane Carter." "Sofa guy," her lips curved. "Sofa guy, got it." He set the couch down with a grunt and straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. "All right, all done." "Would you like some coffee?" she asked suddenly. Zane looked at her, confused. "What, coffee?" she said again, like it wasn't weird at all. "I make a mean espresso. You look like you've been up since dawn." He hesitated. "I have a kid waiting for me downstairs." "Well, my daughter, Zara. She's with my sister in the truck." "Then bring her up," Zaria said, already walking toward the kitchen. "She can color or watch cartoons. I don't bite." "I promise." Zane stared at her in disbelief. "You want me to bring my 7-year-old into your penthouse?" "Yes," she said simply, "unless you think she'll steal the Picasso." "Is that a real Picasso?" he asked before he could stop himself. Zaria just gave him a look and disappeared into the kitchen. Zane ran a hand through his hair. What the hell is happening? 10 minutes later, Zara was sitting cross-legged on the couch she just helped deliver, happily munching on a cookie and watching cartoons on a TV bigger than Zane's entire living room. Zaria poured Zane a coffee and handed it to him like they did this every day. "So," she said, leaning against the counter, "how long have you been doing deliveries?" "Too long," Zane said with a tired smile. "I used to work construction, but after my ex left, I needed something with flexible hours. No one wants to hire a guy who needs to pick his kid up from school at 3. Zaria's expression softened. "You're raising her on your own." "Since she was 2, he nodded. "Just me and Zara. She's my whole world." Zaria looked at him like she was seeing something rare. "That's beautiful." Zane sipped his coffee, suddenly self-conscious. "What do you do, besides owning a penthouse and expensive couches?" She paused, then said casually, "I'm in tech." He raised an eyebrow. "Like, you do coding?" "Not exactly," she said, brushing hair behind her ear. "I run a company, Dovatech." Zane choked on his coffee. "Wait, Dovatech, like the company that bought out half the startups in Silicon Valley last year?" Zaria nodded, amused. "You're the CEO of Dovatech?" he asked, stunned. She laughed. "I said I was in tech." Zane shook his head. "You're a billionaire." Zaria tilted her head. "Does that bother you?" He looked around the apartment. "I mean, yeah, a little. You're drinking espresso out of gold-rimmed cups and I'm wearing boots I glued back together last week." She walked toward him, her eyes sharp but kind. "And yet, you're the most grounded person I've spoken to in weeks." Zane didn't know what to say. No one had ever looked at him like that, like he wasn't just a tired dad with calloused hands. "I should go," he said, clearing his throat. Zaria nodded. "Of course, but..." "Would you come back tomorrow for another couch?" "No," she said quietly. "For lunch with Zara, if you're free." He stared at her. "Why?" She hesitated, then smiled. Because I'd like to talk to you again. And because I like the way you look at the world. Zane glanced at his daughter, who was now curled up with a blanket Zaria had handed her without thinking twice. He looked back at the woman standing in her designer kitchen, offering him something he didn't even know he needed. Okay, he said slowly. Lunch sounds good. Zaria smiled, and for the first time in a long time, Zane felt something shift in his chest hope. And maybe, something more. Zane adjusted the collar of his only decent button-down shirt and glanced at Zara through the rearview mirror. She had a ribbon in her hair and was humming under her breath, legs swinging as she clutched a stack of homemade drawings. He hadn't planned on bringing her handmade art, but she insisted, said Zaria needed decorations for her 2 white walls. He wasn't sure what to expect when they arrived, but it definitely wasn't a barefoot billionaire opening the door herself, wearing jeans and a navy t-shirt that looked more expensive than his entire kitchen. You're early, Zaria said, stepping aside to let them in. I didn't want to get caught in traffic, Zane replied, guiding Zara inside. Zaria knelt. Hey, little artist, you brought me something? Zara beamed. I made you a ballerina and a starfish. The ballerina is you. Zaria blinked, then smiled. That's the most flattering thing anyone's ever said to me. Zane watched her tape the drawings to the fridge without hesitation. No assistants, no staff, just her. They sat down in the sun-drenched breakfast nook. Zaria had already set out 3 plates with grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles, and a salad that looked too fancy to eat. Zane raised an eyebrow but said nothing as Zara dug in. I didn't expect you to make lunch yourself, he said quietly once Zara was occupied. Zaria leaned back. I don't always get the chance. Meetings, travel, people always doing things for me. It's nice to be still. He studied her. You're not what I pictured. I get that a lot. Zane reached for a sandwich. So what made you choose tech? She didn't answer right away. I grew up in a small town in Vermont. My mom worked 2 jobs, and I spent most of my childhood fixing things, trailers, old computers, anything I could get my hands on. I hacked into my school's grading system when I was 13 not to change anything, just to see if I could. Zane raised an eyebrow. That's impressive and slightly terrifying, she laughed. I got caught. Principal made me rewrite the firewall code instead of suspending me. He leaned back. So you built an empire from a trailer, you could say that. Her eyes flicked to Zara. I know what it's like to want more, Zane nodded slowly. Doesn't seem like you forgot where you came from. I can't afford to, she said simply. Money doesn't mean much if it turns you into someone you don't recognize. Zane glanced down at his calloused hands. A lot of people don't think about it like that. Zaria's voice softened. A lot of people haven't had to choose between groceries and rent. He looked at her, surprised by how easily she understood things most people like her never even saw. Zara wiped her mouth and looked up. Do you have a dog? Zaria blinked. No, why? You should, Zara said matter-of-factly. You live way up here, it's too quiet. Zaria rested her chin on her hand. Maybe you're right, Zane laughed. You're going to have her redesign your whole life. I could use the help, Zaria replied. After lunch, Zaria offered to show Zara the rooftop garden. Zane followed them up a private staircase that led to a terrace filled with blooming jasmine, small lemon trees, and iron benches warmed by the sun. Zara darted toward a butterfly bush, chasing the flitting wings with unconstrained joy. Zane leaned on the railing, watching her. She makes everything feel lighter. Zaria stood beside him. She's fearless. She doesn't know enough to be afraid yet, he said. I try to keep it that way. Zaria turned toward him, her hair catching the light. You're doing a good job, he looked at her. I didn't come here expecting any of this. She didn't flinch. Neither did I. They watched Zara for a while in silence. Then Zaria asked, when was the last time you did something just for yourself? Zane scoffed. I don't even remember. You should, she said. Even if it's small, he shook his head. Time isn't something I have a lot of. Zaria reached into her pocket and pulled out a slim card. There's an art exhibit tomorrow. It's not open to the public yet, private preview. I'm on the board. Come with me? Zane stared at the card. You want to take a furniture delivery guy to a private art gala? I want to take you, she said evenly. Not because you're part of some image or project, just because I want to, he held her gaze. I don't have a tux, Zaria smiled. I know a place. I'll take care of it. Zane hesitated. Every instinct told him to say no. But then Zara called his name from across the garden, waving with both arms like she was trying to touch the sky. And for once, he wondered what it would feel like to say yes to something that wasn't about survival. "All right," he said. "I'll come." Zaria didn't say anything, but the way her shoulders relaxed told him more than words could. As they left, Zara clutched a lemon from the rooftop tree like it was treasure, and Zane felt something stir in his chest again, something wild and dangerous. Hope. And maybe the beginning of something he never thought he'd be allowed to want. Zane adjusted the stiff lapel of the tailored tuxedo jacket and stared at his reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at him didn't feel like him. The fabric hugged his frame too well. The shoes gleamed under the dim lighting of the fitting room, and the cufflinks, a subtle brushed silver, seemed like something you'd only see behind glass at a museum. A knock came from outside the door. "You all right in there?" He opened the door and stepped out. Zaria stood waiting, not in her usual clean lines of corporate armor, but in a midnight blue gown that fell in soft folds around her, the neckline elegant, the back dipping low enough to make his breath catch. Her expression didn't give anything away, but her eyes scanned him once slowly. "You clean up well," she said simply. Zane glanced down. "I feel like I should be guarding the place, not walking into it." "You're not a bodyguard," she said. "You're my guest." They took the waiting car together, a silent glide through Manhattan's evening chaos. The city buzzed just outside the tinted windows, but inside the car it was quiet, the distance between them charged in a way that neither of them acknowledged out loud. The gallery was nestled in Tribeca, hidden behind frosted glass and a discreet iron gate. Zane followed Zaria through the entrance, where a valet whisked away their coats and a woman in black offered them champagne. He declined, but Zaria accepted hers with a nod of thanks. Inside, the space was vast and whitewashed, the lighting dimmed to spotlight the towering canvases and intricate sculptures. People moved in slow, curated circles, murmuring with practiced ease. Zane felt like a man who'd walked into the wrong room and everyone knew it. Zaria leaned closer. "Half these people are pretending to understand what they're looking at. You're already ahead of the curve by admitting you don't." He gave her a sideways glance. "Is that supposed to make me feel better? That depends." "Is it working?" He exhaled through his nose, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Maybe a little." A man with salt and pepper hair and a tailored charcoal suit approached, holding 2 glasses. "Zaria, you're late." She turned, polite but cool. "I wasn't aware I was on your schedule, Malcolm. Is this your +1?" he asked, eyes flicking to Zane. "Interesting choice." Zane extended a hand. "Zane Carter." Malcolm stared at it a beat too long before shaking it. "Malcolm Trent, Zaria's board liaison." "We've worked together for years." Zaria cut in. "Malcolm, we're not discussing business tonight. Enjoy the show." She moved past him and Zane followed, their pace quickening as murmurs began to rise behind them. Once they were alone near a sculpture of twisted steel, Zane leaned close. "So that's the kind of guy you usually bring to these things?" "No," Zaria said calmly. "That's the kind of man who thinks he owns everything he touches." He studied her. "And you let people like that stay in your orbit." She looked out at the crowd. "Sometimes you keep your enemies close. Sometimes you keep them exactly where they expect to find you so they never notice when you move." Zane shook his head. "You don't belong in cages like this." Her gaze snapped to his. "What does that mean?" He didn't look away. "You're not like them. You don't talk like them, you don't think like them, but here you are playing their game." She stepped back, her voice lower. "You think I have a choice?" Zane folded his arms. "I think you forgot that you do." A beat of silence passed between them, thick with everything unspoken. Then she said, "Come with me." She led him to a side stairwell, away from the buzz and the carefully curated smiles. They climbed to a rooftop patio strung with minimalist lights that swayed slightly in the wind. The city stretched before them, glittering immense. Zaria crossed to the edge and rested her hands on the stone railing. "I hate those events, always have, but I go, every time." Zane stood beside her. "Why?" "Because if I don't show up, they write me off. If I speak too much, I'm arrogant. If I speak too little, I'm cold. If I bring someone like Malcolm, they nod and say smart choice. If I bring someone like you, they whisper." Zane turned toward her. And you still invited me. I wanted you there, she said, voice steady. Not because I needed a date. Because I needed someone real in a room full of ghosts. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was heavy, meaningful. Zane looked up at the sky. I used to think I had to keep my head down, work hard, stay out of trouble, take care of my kid. That was my whole world. Zaria tilted her head. And now, he met her gaze. Now I'm not sure if I've been surviving or just hiding. She stepped closer. You're allowed to want something more. I don't know what that looks like, he said quietly. Her hand touched his arm. Maybe we figure it out together. Zane didn't reply right away. But he didn't pull away either. The lights above them flickered slightly in the wind, and below, the city moved like a restless heartbeat. But up here, it was quiet again. Zane glanced at her hand on his sleeve, then up into her eyes. I'm not going to be a secret, he said. You won't be, Zaria replied with certainty. Not to me. And for the first time since he'd walked into her penthouse, Zane didn't feel like a guest in someone else's life. He felt invited, chosen, and that terrified him more than anything. Zane stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching Zara skip between polished marble columns in a pink tulle dress that floated around her knees. The benefit gala was in full swing below the glass dome of the Uptown Botanical Conservatory, and somehow, he was here wearing a suit that had been delivered to his apartment that morning with a handwritten note from Zaria clipped to the lapel. No instructions. Just, come, I want you here. He hadn't planned on bringing Zara, but Zaria had insisted. She'd even arranged for her to be picked up from school by a vetted driver, someone from her own team. Now, his daughter was twirling beneath crystal chandeliers like she'd always belonged there. A waiter passed with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Zane took one, mostly to have something to do with his hands. He scanned the crowd, men in sharp tuxedos, women in gowns that sparkled under the lights, murmured laughter, clinking glasses. And then, across the room, Zaria appeared. She moved with quiet elegance, speaking to a sponsor from the Arts Council, her expression smooth but not distant. Her hair was swept up tonight, a soft twist with a single diamond pin at the base. When her eyes met his, she excused herself and walked straight toward him. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said, stepping close. I almost didn't, he admitted, but Zara wanted to see the flowers. A small laugh escaped her. She's stealing every heart in this place. She does that, he said. You look different tonight. Her brow lifted slightly. Worse or better? Like you built this whole place out of light and then stepped inside it. Zaria blinked once. That might be the most beautiful thing anyone's ever said to me. He glanced around at the towering orchids and vines wrapped in fairy lights. This place is unreal. I wanted it to feel like possibility, she said, her voice quieter now. This isn't about donors or appearances. It's for kids like I was who never imagined they'd walk into a room like this and feel welcome. Zane nodded slowly. You're changing the rules. I'm rewriting them, she said. From the ground up. He looked at her then. Really looked. Not as the woman in the penthouse or the CEO in heels, but as someone who had clawed her way through the world and still chose kindness over control. And she'd invited him into that world not as a novelty, but as something real. I got a job offer, he said after a pause. Her eyes didn't waver. Where? Local contracting firm, full-time, benefits, decent pay. I'd still be able to pick Zara up most days. She smiled. That's incredible. You deserve that. I wouldn't have gone for it if you hadn't told me to stop hiding. Zaria hesitated for the first time. I was afraid I overstepped. No, he said. You did the opposite. A string quartet began a slow, drifting melody, and couples filed onto the dance floor. Zaria extended a hand toward him. Dance with me. He stared at her hand, then looked past her at Zara, now sitting cross-legged near the fountain, chatting with the event planner's daughter like they were old friends. I've never danced in public before, he said. That makes two of us, she replied. He took her hand. They moved slowly, the music folding around them. Zane's hands found her waist, her palm rested against his chest. She was warm, steady, and closer now than she'd ever been. I didn't think someone like you existed, he murmured. She tilted her head. Why? Because I run a company, because you see people, all the way through. Zaria's voice dropped to a whisper. It's hard not to see you. A camera flashed nearby, then another. Zane tensed. They're taking pictures, he said. Zaria didn't move. Let them. Won't that be a problem? She looked up at him. If people see me with a man who works hard, raises his daughter alone, and refuses to pretend for anyone, then maybe they'll remember what strength actually looks like. You're not worried about image. I'm done hiding behind polish, she said. I want a life that feels like truth. The music swelled. He pulled her just a little closer. After the dance, Zara bounded up, cheeks flushed. Can we stay till the end? Zaria crouched beside her. It's your night too. Zane watched them, a strange ache blooming in his chest. It wasn't fear. It was hope settling into something real. Later that night, on the rooftop of the conservatory, Zaria led him to a side terrace strung with hanging lanterns. The city pulsed below, but up here, the world felt still. I have something for you, she said. Zane raised an eyebrow. I don't need anything. She reached into her clutch and handed him a folded piece of paper. He opened it slowly. It was a lease agreement. A modest 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood near a good school. The monthly rent was blank. What is this? He asked. A home, she said. One that's yours, no strings. Zara deserves space to grow. You deserve a place to breathe. He stared at her. You can't just give people apartments. I can, she said simply. But I'm not. I'm offering it. You can say no, but I hope you won't. He folded the paper, heart pounding. Why are you doing this? Because I love you, she said. The silence that followed cracked something wide open in him. He stepped forward, hands cupping her face. I never thought I'd hear that again. You don't have to say it back, she whispered. I do, he said, because I do. I love you. She kissed him, then slow, sure, the kind of kiss that stitches broken things back together. When they finally pulled apart, she smiled. So, are you going to move in? He laughed. Only if Zara gets her own room. She'll have the biggest one. Zane looked out over the city, then back at the woman in his arms. I didn't know life could look like this. Zaria leaned her head against his chest. It can. And it will. Below them, the music drifted up from the open skylight, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like home. Zane tightened his grip on the bouquet in his hands, the stems wrapped in soft linen and bound with a single strand of navy ribbon. He hadn't done flowers in years, not since Zara was born, and yet here he was, standing in the middle of a museum atrium that had been closed off just for this moment. Zaria stood beneath a sweeping glass skylight, her back to him as she examined a new installation of kinetic light sculptures. Her heels clicked softly on the mosaic floor as she turned toward him, her expression unreadable. I thought you hated surprises, she said. I do, he replied. But you don't, so I figured I'd try something that feels a little like you. She walked toward him slowly, her eyes flicking to the bouquet before returning to his face. What's this for? She asked. For saying yes to something I never would have believed I deserved, he said. For not letting me run when I wanted to, for showing me that building a life doesn't always mean doing it alone. She took the bouquet and held it close, brushing her fingers over the petals. You remembered I like irises. You mentioned it once, he said. I was paying attention, her voice softened. I know you were, he took a breath. I have something else, she raised an eyebrow. Another surprise. No, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. A promise. He pulled out a folded sheet of paper and handed it to her. She opened it, her eyes skimming the lines slowly. Her lips parted. This is a business license, he said. I'm opening my own contracting firm, fully legal, starting small, but it's mine. Zara helped me pick the name. The Carter Build, she read aloud. That's bold, it's honest, he said. And I wouldn't have done it without you, she looked up at him. You did this, I just reminded you it was possible, he stepped closer. I want to build something with you, Zaria, not just a company, not just a better apartment, a life, one that feels like ours. Her eyes searched his. Do you know what you're asking? I do, he said, and I'm not afraid of it anymore. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, without a word, she set the bouquet down on the bench beside them and slid her arms around his neck. I've been waiting for you to say that, she whispered. He kissed her before the moment could pass. Later that evening, they returned to the new apartment, still bare in places, but already filled with warmth. Zara had been staying at Zaria's assistant's house for the night, the two girls having planned a movie marathon. It was the first evening Zane and Zaria had entirely to themselves, and neither of them said anything for a while as they walked through the apartment, their fingers laced together. In the kitchen, Zane opened a drawer and pulled out a small box. "I don't have a ring yet," he said. "But I have this." Zaria opened the box, revealing a delicate gold charm bracelet. Each charm had been chosen carefully: a tiny hammer, a ballerina, a miniature lemon. "I wanted something that told the story of us," he said. She ran her fingers over the charms, her voice catching. "It's perfect. I'm not asking for forever tonight," he added, "but I want to build toward it." Her eyes shimmered. "Then let's start." They moved through the evening like they'd been doing this for years, cooking together, laughing over mismatched plates, dancing barefoot in the hallway to a record Zaria had found in a Brooklyn thrift store. By the time Zara returned the next morning, the sun was pouring through the windows, and the apartment smelled like cinnamon toast and fresh coffee. Zara ran straight to the table, dropping her overnight bag. "Can we go to the park later?" Zaria glanced at Zane. "Definitely." Zara turned to them, her eyes narrowing. "Did you guys kiss?" Zane coughed. Zaria laughed. "Yes," she said, "and we might do it again." Zara shrugged. "Okay, but only if you still let me pick the movie tonight." "Deal," Zane said. That afternoon they went to the park. Zane pushed Zara on the swings while Zaria read beside him, her fingers brushing his knee every so often, like she needed to confirm this was real. In the months that followed, the Carter build took off slowly but steadily. Zaria helped him network, but only when he asked. She never stepped in uninvited, never tried to control it. She showed up to his first ribbon-cutting ceremony in jeans and sneakers, holding a bouquet of wildflowers that Zara had picked from their rooftop garden. They never rushed things. They didn't need to. One evening, nearly a year after that first delivery, Zane walked into the living room to find Zaria asleep on the couch, Zara draped across her like a blanket. A movie flickered on the TV, long forgotten. He watched them for a moment, the sound of their even breathing filling the silence. He didn't need a penthouse to feel like he'd made it. He had this. A home filled with laughter. A woman who saw him. A daughter who believed in magic again. Zane turned off the TV, covered them both with a blanket, and sat beside them, his hand resting lightly over Zaria's. She stirred slightly, eyes opening just enough to find his. "Still here," she murmured. "Always," he said, and he meant it.